Quantum physics teaches us that the external world we experience with our senses is a reflection of our inner world, meaning that if we don't like the way our life is going, our relationships or whatever, instead of trying to, in the outer world, change that, maybe, just maybe the answer is to go within, slow down, to soften, to check in what's going on the inside, get your inner landscape in order, in homeostasis, and from there outwardly express. So to me, what really came down to was anyone's mission, purpose, or dharma is all about self-love. Anything more than that is contributing to the mess.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Mental Purpose Podcast. I'm your host, Ian Lobos. Today we've got a really exciting episode, super powerful, super packed with information. I'm going to tell you a couple things. One, I'm going to tell you about the guest. Two, I'm going to tell you all the things we're going to talk about, and we're going to get right into it. So my guest today is Sam Kabert, and Sam has a insanely impressive resume for being only 34 years old. I'm going to read you his bio because it needs that, right? Does it justice. So Sam Kabert is a successful serial entrepreneur turned spiritual seeker and keynote speaker. He's known for his ability to put together teams and execute his vision. He's the author of the #1 best-selling book, Soul Life Balance, founder of Swagworks and Clone Yourself University, and he hosts Soul Seeker Podcast. Now, despite all of Sam's ventures and business success and being recognized as Silicon Valley's 40 under 40, that's a big deal. At 31 years old and a rising star, he soon recognized that something was missing. Sam realized that despite his success, he was unhappy, and that understanding catapulted him on his exploration of life's purpose. So we're going to have an incredible conversation. He is on a mission to bridge the gap between the way we conduct ourselves in business, mindful practices, how we communicate with everyone, especially ourselves, all through prioritizing psychological safety and mental health first, right? So we're going to talk a lot about mental and emotional health. So now he's bridging the gap between that business and personal that we talk about in the mental purpose world. So before we get started, let me tell you all the things that we're going to discuss today so you know you're in the right place and you should invest this hour. Okay, we're going to talk about life balance between business and personal. We're going to talk about energy balance between masculine and feminine. We're going to talk about a little bit about plant medicine, just a little bit, just a tad bit. We're going to talk about habits that don't serve and how to move them off, and how to adopt habits that do serve you without worrying what people think about you, or even, how you're going to look to the world. We're going to talk about pushing out of your comfort zone, making time to just observe the world around you. We're going to talk about the soul and life evaluation, making your personal growth just simple. We're going to talk about being instead of doing, and going through your morning routine as a being instead of a doing, and really finding out what serves you best. We're going to talk about, obviously, purpose. And the goal in life may be to find your purpose. And when you do, and you are fully aligned, man, your life actually just opens up at that point, and life may be completely different for you. I know it was for me. I know it was for Sam. We're going to talk about self-love, self-care, doing the inner work. We're going to talk about quantum physics and how that plays in integrating back into the world after an illuminating experience, right? A plant medicine ceremony, a really great seminar, a really great podcast, a really great whatever it might be, something that blew your mind, changed some of your wiring and there's just a chemical balance in your body, and coming back in and integrating back into the world, and how to do that in a really purposeful manner. Being more to do more, doing too much and understanding what serves you best, sustainability, putting yourself first, working on versus working in the business, slowing down again, money being your identity, and so much more. And it's such a great flow of a conversation. I absolutely love conversations like this because they're effortless. When you talk to a person that's truly aligned, truly tapped in, not Instagram aligned, not they're doing it for their social media feed, really somebody that has the integrity behind the commitment to tap into that authentic self, to really discover and reveal that guy, and then align with that purpose. That is what Mental on Purpose does, man. That is what this entire organization is about. For those of you that are involved, For those of you that aren't involved, here's how you can get involved. mentalpurpose.net, our coaching, our podcast, our community, our courses, our retreats, everything's on there. Our mastermind is wide open right now. And I created it so that it's not cohort based. You can join at any time. And I doubled the amount of group coaching calls weekly. So now there's even more value because I am committed to this journey. I want and encourage you to find who you really are and why you're really here. Align with that and live that and see what life looks like after that. And I'm empowering men, right? This is what we're doing here, empowering men to free themselves of internal restriction and constraint that they are allowing to hold them back. And when they get free of that, which is they're doing through our stuff, right? Through our curriculum, through our exercises, when they free themselves of that internal restriction and constraint, they can actually live the most authentic, fulfilling, and regret-free life possible. That's freaking amazing. That is freaking amazing. Look, we appreciate all of you. Hit mentalpurpose.net up. There's a ton of free stuff on there. Link to join our community, link for the podcast, download it, subscribe, leave a rating and review. We love you. We appreciate you. Enjoy the episode. All right, Sam, dude, I'm so excited to talk with you and just, I love these kind of conversations that we're about to have. I don't know what it's going to be. I just know it's going to be good and the audience is going to benefit. So I was telling you before we started recording, when your one sheet came over to me, it was exciting because it's everything I like to talk about. It's everything that our guys need to hear and want to hear. And I know that you'll be able to provide some direction on, all right, well, what do I do with this information? So I listened to this podcast. I heard this guy talking. Now what do I do? And that's where we're going to go, man. So let's start off with your story because you accomplished a lot at a young age and then something happened. So let's go through your story.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you so much, first off, Ian, for having me on the podcast. I'm really big into men's work right now, so your mission really aligns with me. But the short version of my story as it is now is I'm 34 years old, and I launched my first business in college at age 22. I was in my final semester, and I'm not going to get into all the specifics of that because it'll take too much time away, but I really got this chip on my shoulder through getting a DUI less than 12 months before that. And before that, I was a college student at Chico State. Some people know it if you live in California or the West Coast, but in terms of like nationwide notoriety, it's not a big school. It's a small D2 school in a college town. And, you know, back in the 90s, it used to be Playboy's #1 party school. Not anymore, but even when I was there, major party school, you know, everything you could ever want in the college experience. I was in the top frat. I repped Monster energy drinks, a few other brands I repped, and we lived above the most popular bar in town, like literally lived above it. So definitely got the whole college experience, you know, and then I had gotten this DUI and it was earth shattering and I thought my life was over. And that was like really one of the big first pivotal moments in my life, especially in my career. And that's when I decided that I wanted to make something of myself. I didn't want to be another statistic. I didn't want to be someone who got a first DUI, then a second, and then more, and then their life just crumbles. And, you know, that's really where the chip on the shoulder developed. And at the time I was reading a book called Think and Grow Rich. It's my favorite book by Napoleon Hill. He wrote it back in 1937. And these days, so many people are talking about masterminds, but they don't necessarily know that Napoleon Hill was kind of the guy that coined the term mastermind back in 1937. And it's the ultimate like business book, in my opinion, or even life book, because it's about so much more than just rich, you know, as in money. It's rich as in chocolate. I say it's like think and grow meaningful life as opposed to just money. That said, I had my sights on the money, you know, and I was very much wanting to build a big business. And my company, eventually I rebranded the first company to Swagworks in 2018 or so. And what we do is we sell branded merchandise. We sell swag, right? Very simple. And I built out this brand, Swag Sam. It was my personal brand. And I did that through podcasts. I had a few different podcasts. The first podcast was called What Up Silicon Valley, because I was living in Silicon Valley at the time. And it was like an interview show, interviewing movers and shakers. We ended up restructuring the podcast to be a media network. And then from there, we had 5 different shows on the network. We did monthly young professionals events and an annual event at eBay's headquarters called Pitch Tank. It was an entrepreneur, Shark Tank style event, if you will. So did all that, and then through that we became partners with, a few different legit clubs locally that I can say your listeners, but they might not know, but they're like really good business networking clubs. I end up being named Silicon Valley's 40 under 40 list in 2019, and I was 31 years old at the time. That was around May. And in February of 2019, I was going through this numbing depression. And like a lot of these stories, it starts with a relationship. So there's a girl involved, and we were on and off for 4 years, the whole thing. And then, kind of just off. And that was part of what sent me to this numbing depression. But a bigger part of that was just not knowing who I was anymore and just getting lost in chasing success. It really felt like I was chasing success. I had heard about ayahuasca a year previously, and it came back into my being. And I've not obviously, but I've done a lot of mushrooms in my day before that, but I'd never done like a intentional medicine ceremony. It was always recreational use with psychedelics as opposed to ceremonial use with plant medicine. And I could just feel it in my soul that I was being called to this thing. And the people actually offered breathwork journeys, just you and your breath for 60 and 90 minutes. And I did a breathwork journey with them, and I literally felt reborn. I can speak a lot about that. And then I end up going to the ayahuasca ceremony, and it just showed me everything, right? And from there, I was just so thirsty on the spiritual journey. I went down the rabbit hole with blinders on. I changed a lot of my friends, relationships, the content I was consuming, everything, whether it was podcasts or watching TV or conversations, wherever my energy was going, it was all centered around soul development. So I did that for the past, that was mid 2019. And I mean, I still am doing that, but it kind of culminated last December in feeling called to go to yoga teacher training. And I didn't know why. Like, feeling called, that's not like language I would use before. For a while, I'd call myself a recovering bro, just jokingly. But the truth is, like, I went through this whole journey of learning to work with my intuition, also having discernment and knowing the difference if it's intuition or the ego coming through. And there are just all these synchronicities lining up for me to go do this yoga teacher training in Nasara in Costa Rica. And I ended up saying yes. I didn't know why. I could never have seen myself as a yoga teacher, but I did the thing. I end up within a few days being like, I want to teach yoga. I want to lead men's groups. And I came back around Christmas of last year, 2021. And ever since I came back, I've been teaching yoga, facilitating men's groups. I just went through a breathwork facilitator training course. I'm speaking on stages about the message of soul life balance, with my fourth book being published this year, with the name being Soul Life Balance. Subtitle is A Guide to Igniting and Integrating Spiritual Awakenings. So that's just like a quick overview of what's been going on in my career in the past, what has it been, 12 years or so, and really some highlights from the past 3.
Dude, I think one of the most important things we've got to touch on there, and I think, look, audience, read Sam's bio. I'll go over it in the intro. Sam downplayed a lot of that, a lot of the successes. So not downplayed, just they weren't included. And I say that because there's so many men out there, myself included, you included, who are chasing that money, right? Sight set on the money. Did the money for you make your identity, make your value to the world? Is that what you were thinking, or was it something else?
Yeah, you're right. The money was what my identity was. And, I had a lot of fights with my ex, the woman I was seeing, toxic relationships, and with her, the off and on. And I remember, not vividly, but I remember now that you're asking the question, I used to tell her, like, hey, my first priority is my business. My second priority is this puppy I just got, right? And you're my third priority. Like, can you imagine saying that to someone? Like, that's not nice.
Yeah, oh no, I can imagine. I've said it before.
Yeah. So that's the thing. Like, it's not very kind. And I pretty much say it matter of fact. I think multiple times like that. I can laugh about it now, but like, the interesting part about it is it's also speaking your truth, being like, hey, this is where I'm at. And I totally respect people that are chasing success, chasing the dollar in hustle culture. I get it all. It's just, it's not for me anymore. And I think there's a better way that we can move forward and be working in our business to build something and focused on making money and having a great life, but also feeding our soul. And that's through this practice of soul life balance, where we put ourselves first while simultaneously reframing work to being a part of the human experience. Because at the end of the day, as you kind of alluded to, Ian, like if you make all this money and you have all this success, but you don't know who you are and you aren't connected within, then you're not going to feel good. And I believe that's why so many CEOs, C-level people, successful people do the thing. Then they get into spirituality because they've reached that top of the mountain, what they thought the mountain was. And they're like, oh shit, like this wasn't exactly the mountain that I want to go down. Like, and you start to do the inner work from there.
Yeah, man. What's interesting is we talk a lot about legacy here. I was watching a reel earlier from Prince EA, and he did this cool reel that was like, it was him talking to himself in a sauna, and the one version of him is like counting the money, and the guy's like, yo, so much money, look at this, man, my customers are so dumb, look at all this money I've got, they just keep paying me and I don't even know what I'm doing for them, money keeps rolling in, like. And then the other guy, him, says, well, what are you going to do with all the money? He says, well, I'm building generational wealth. And then the let's call it the angel and the devil, like the angel version of him says, what does that even mean? You have kids, you have a family. And he says, yeah, I've got a kid in the family. They come after the business. I'm helping my customers. I'm helping my clients. And I think we tell ourselves that because it makes sense. We're helping our clients. We're helping our customers. We have an obligation to them. Yet we built that business that now has an obligation to these clients. This family, we have an obligation just inherently because we created this family, or we got married to this person. And when we talk about legacy, we talk about it being something that a lot of people think it's assets, it's cash flow for the future for your children. But what about when your children watch you prioritizing business and clients over them? And what about when your children watch you as a total asshole to your spouse and ignoring your health, all for this chase of generational wealth or financial freedom? Well, what happens then? What about the man that you are? What about the model you are to those kids or to the outside world? And that matters a lot. I want to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, man. Well said, Ian. That totally resonates. And what comes up for me is it's like, what's it all worth if we're conditioning and raising children that have those priorities and we're creating more chaos in the world? Because let's face it, like the world is a chaotic place. We learned in COVID, I think most of us at least realized how chaotic the world is just by simply slowing down. And I think the majority of the world isn't comfortable with slowing down. But for me, like with respect to the devastation the pandemic caused, it was also such a beautiful time where we had this gift to just slow down. And I think a lot of people were able to reconnect with themselves, their families, and their closest relationships, even though it would be hard in a lot of different kind of ways. But I just mean the perspective shift. That's also, that really resonates with me because kind of like you said, if you're just focused on generational wealth and you're putting the business first, and that's the type of example you're setting for your kids, then aren't they just going to contribute more to this? And really, like, I live out the ocean now, and I just went paddleboarding yesterday, and there's two seals that were just like looking up in the sky. And anytime I run into a seal that's looking up into the sky, because they do that often, like just their heads bobbing out of water and they're just looking up, I'm like, what does the seal think of like the sky and everything else? Like their whole world is underwater and it's in the ocean and everything else. And then I start to zoom out and think about different animals and how we're the only animals that are like chasing money and this whole thing, and none of it even matters, right? So
I mean, isn't that because we're, I learned this in Landmark a long time ago, like, isn't that because we're associating meaning with things, and the animal kingdom without language doesn't associate meaning? You know what I mean? Whether it's your personal value, or it's the meaning that money brings, or the meaning of when I have money, I'm at this level and, I'm untouchable, or I'm better than you, or whatever it might be.
Well, I think there's definitely a lot of materialism that goes on. And as I mentioned before we hit record, I actually just got back from teaching yoga today. And that was my theme, kind of non-attachment and materialism. And I've
Yeah.
seen that in myself so much in my awakening journey of how much I outsource my own happiness and brands. Like my
Yeah.
favorite brand is Chubbies. Do you know Chubbies?
Yeah. The shorts.
Yeah, yeah. I can't get enough of Chubbies, and their email marketing is so good that like they're always popping in, and I know that I don't need this extra whatever it is, but yet I still find myself finding like outsourcing to my happiness to materialism. And I think that what the big lesson here is, if you're someone that can relate with not feeling in alignment with materialism, is if you find yourself really buying more than you need, bring that awareness to it. Because the first step is to have that awareness. Most of us are just going to do it, then we're going to feel better, then we're going to go on to the next thing. But how we actually create change is by slowing down, bringing the awareness to the thing. Then from there, we can make a conscious and intentional decision of how we'd like to move forward with whatever it might be. I'm just using the example of
Yeah.
materialism.
What about slowing down? I want to dig into that for a little bit because I would say 90% of the guys that I talk to are busy, right? They're busy, busy, busy. They've got metrics in terms of success around money and their business growth, and they're thinking, well, I'm advancing, I'm advancing. Yet on the personal side, so many things are falling down, falling apart in their marriage, in their personal life, their health, or whatever it might be, even just mental and emotional health. And slowing down is one of the things that we have to start with, which is, why don't we just slow the pace here? Let's not do as much tomorrow or this week. Let's slow down and let's start to understand what we're running from.
Mm-hmm.
And in that respect, most people are terrified for that monster that they're running from. They probably don't even know it, like what the monster is. They're terrified to actually let the monster catch up and face it. So they're using all these outside things to avoid and distract and escape from. Like, let's talk about slowing down for a second. What is your reasoning, or what is your opinion on why people just, or most men just won't slow down, and they have this pace that's just repetitive and dangerous?
I honestly think it's the conditioning of society where we don't feel enough. And it's kind of this comparisonitis where we look at ourselves to someone else and then we compare to them, and then we start to feel even more limited. I think there's a lot of conditioning and programming in society that lends itself to a victim mentality for the collective consciousness. And how that really manifests is, like you're saying, where we are so much in our yang energy, or the archetypal energy of the masculine, if that resonates, as opposed to the yin energy or the feminine archetypal energy, which is about softening and slowing down. And slowing down can mean a lot of different things. It's very it's a broad term. So I think for men, most of us, like, we want to be macho. We want to be the alpha. Like a lot of like my growing up in circles I've been in, like it's a lot of like, who's going to be the alpha? And it's very, I don't want to say toxic, but it's not always like the best way to lead. Right. And I'll answer this another way. So I talk about soul life balance, right, as a reframe of work life balance. Well, I'm even wearing a yin yang shirt if people are watching on YouTube, but it doesn't matter. We can all see the yin yang and we all can conceptualize it. And most of us know that the yang energy is equated to the masculine archetypal energy, which is how we show up, what we do in the world, right, externally. Whereas the yin energy is the archetypal energy of the feminine. And when I say feminine and masculine, I'm not talking about genitalia. We all have the masculine and feminine within us. The feminine is receptivity, it's intuition, it's the inner world, and it's really more about slowing down. So for me, like, I'm just going to be real, right? Like I heard Rogan back in like, I don't know, 2017 or something, talking about yoga and how hard yoga is and all this type of stuff. And I used to do yoga in college, but then my friends would make fun of me from outside the window, like at the gym doing yoga. So I stopped doing it. So then when I heard Rogan talking about it, I was like, oh, I should try this yoga thing, because Rogan gave a metaphorical permission slip for me and other men to do something that otherwise might not seem macho,
Yeah.
right? And at the end of the day, it's tools like that that help us to slow down. So I hope that kind of answers your question. And to bring it full circle with soul life balance, soul is equated to the yin and life is equated to the yang, because work is yang. We can all agree with that. So the idea is to put that yin energy first to kind of retrain us. And then the second part of this that I kind of heard you ask as well is like, how do you actually get there to be able to slow down? And to your point earlier, I didn't mention everything I've done and whatnot, but I actually built my first business to $1 million company while working less than 4 hours a day. And I did that by shifting from an employee-based business model to a freelancer-based business model. And the name of the game for me as a business owner is to have a well-oiled machine that runs itself without me working in the business. I want to be focused working on the business. So I look at it as like a puzzle of how little can I do? I want to do the least amount that I need to do. I want to focus on the stuff that lights me up and the stuff that requires my specific skill set. From there, I end up writing my first book, which was about scaling businesses with virtual assistants, create a coaching company called Clone Yourself, also a podcast, Clone Yourself as well, that teaches entrepreneurs how to scale their business with freelancer teams. And then I end up creating a marketing agency called Wizard Teams, where we just do it for you. So that said, like, I think from a business point of view, we really, if you're an entrepreneur, if you're a business owner, the name of the game is to have a well-oiled machine that runs itself. So we should be trying to take things off our plate. Then the second part is, okay, now that we have more free time, like, how are we going to spend that time? Hopefully it's not out the bars and just getting drunk and, numbing us with more distractions, right? If you're feeling that whisper, that call to go a little bit deeper, then things like yoga, meditation, breath work, sauna, ice bath, all that type of stuff. There's so much more can be really helpful to learn how to actually slow down, because if you just free up your time and you're used to a busy lifestyle, you're probably going to fill it doing other things. But to slow down, we want to create that space with less things on our calendar.
Yeah, and the slowing down is, it's like chicken and the egg. I'm not sure what comes first. Is it slowing down and then put yourself first, or is it putting yourself first and then slowing down? Well, I'm gonna dig into that with you. There's there's also what you said in there was like the habits that are created. And I talked to a lot of guys who have built companies and they've been working for 20 years, and they're like, yeah, man, next year I'm gonna sell this thing, I'm gonna exit, I'm gonna have $15 million and X. I'm gonna do all these things I said I was gonna do. And then I know a lot of guys who have exited their companies and they're like, what the hell do I do now? My habit has always been grind, hustle, work. Work's always first. Now all of a sudden you're at a certain age where change doesn't come as easily. It's not that it doesn't. It's just you have to work a little harder because you've ingrained these habits over time for so long that now all of a sudden what you thought 15 years ago would be easy today is 10 times harder. And so these guys are having trouble, one, slowing down, right? They're always busy. Now there's those house projects. Now there's this project. Now I'm building that. I'm doing this. I'm going to start another business. I'm thinking about buying a business, like just back into the cycle. So in your opinion, is this slowdown first and then learn to put yourself first? Or is it learn to put yourself first and then you can slow down?
That's a really great question, Ian. And I think a lot of times, especially for men, but for all humans, gender inclusive, all that type of stuff, I think unfortunately, traumatic events or anything that could be depressive type symptoms, anything that happens in your life that lends you to starting to question is typically how we would start to slow down and look within. It's very hard for someone like you're describing where they free up their time and then it's like the next project, like there's no real reason, if you will. So I don't know which is first. And I think it is the chicken or the egg. And I think it depends on every unique situation. Having said that, I would say, unfortunately, the common theme that we usually see, and I bet I'd be curious to hear your thoughts, but it's usually through anything that causes turmoil in one's life.
Yeah. There's some kind of event that triggers some kind of pain or fear that's bigger than probably anything else you've dealt with. I mean, there are some guys I talk to that continue to deal with the same big pain events, big fear events that come up and something then hits on top of it to trigger them to take action. So I would agree with that. I totally agree with that. There's got to be something that hits you hard enough, whether it's a financial scare, a divorce scare, a medical scare, something, a business failure, something in there hits you that causes that awakening, so to speak, or it causes the blinders to come off and for you to start seeing the world around you a little differently. And you're like, oh, damn, man. And I think what happens at that point is that regrets start to pile or they compound, and then action needs to be taken.
Yeah, absolutely. I like what you had to say about the blinders too.
Yeah. So now we're putting ourselves first. Let's give the how, because a couple of guys are going to be like, well, how do you do it?
Yeah.
What's your opinion on guys listening to this right now? And he's like, all right, man, you guys make sense. I know I need to slow down. I know I need to put myself first. What are some action items that the guy can take to just execute on this now?
I think for men, a really easy thing would be to go into nature. And, whether you're someone who's a fisherman, a hunter, or you like to hike, or you like to ride mountain bikes, like whatever it is, I would say physical activity could be a sport, joining. I know it sounds counterintuitive, joining like a league. So maybe not something like that. But, if you used to play basketball when you were younger, I was doing this for a while and just riding my bike to the neighborhood park, kind of like when no one else is there, and then just shooting some hoops, doing my own thing. And it's almost like meditative. Or I used to do triathlons before I was into this kind of work, and running would really clear my mind and help me to slow down, as would swimming. So if you're someone who you're feeling like meditation or journaling or breath work or yoga is not exactly where you're at right now, I think to keep it simple, go out in nature, slow down. It doesn't have to be physical activity or sport. It could be a hike. It could be just listening and in your backyard and just taking everything in. I saw a spiritual teacher named Adyashanti. Do you know who he is? He's amazing. He's so good. I saw him speak a few years ago. His name's Adyashanti. He's written a bunch of books and he's really good. But anyways, he was talking about the lost art of porch gazing, where most of us, especially out here in the West, we don't make time to just for stillness and to look. Like we will make time for meditation if we're into this type of stuff to go within. But what about the external world? And what about creating time to just look and observe if there's hummingbirds there, or, if you can hear the wind or the color of the plants you have, whatever it might be, taking it all in. And I think that's a really accessible way for us to slow down. And I know I just said a bunch of different ways. So hopefully there's something there that resonates with you. If there's not, I definitely have a ton more resources in my book. My course, I have some things as well. And a practical thing that I'm thinking about right now, as I'm just thinking this out loud, is just doing a soul life evaluation. And I don't have everything in front of me, but typically with this, I have specific questions, and I can send this to you, put in show notes. But you would do an evaluation of how you're feeding your soul, and an evaluation of your life, and in what areas of your life are serving you, what areas aren't. So things like that are a good place to start.
Yeah. And look, dude, the experience that I've had, we have breath work that my good friend Sam Morris did for the MOP Mastermind.
Love Sam Morris.
Yeah. So I asked Sam to cut a breath work session for us, specifically MOP derived, I guess, or based. So we did. So like in our mastermind, in our Discovering Design Mastermind, even in our VMP courses, the first thing you're going to do is help yourself get into a certain state, right? You're going to put yourself in a certain environment that's conducive to your own growth. And then you're going to put your body into a certain state, and then you're going to do the work. You're not doing the work from a do it perspective. You're doing the work from a be it perspective. And so something that I think about is a lot of the guys have an issue with breath work because it's so confronting, and it sounds so simple, and it's not. And there's a slowdown aspect, there's a stillness aspect, there's all these things that are confronting to some guys that are in their mid 30s, mid 40s, who have really never taken the time to slow down enough. I mean, I have guys that'll say, I can't last more than 30 seconds. Like,
Wow.
I just cannot stay in that breath work for more than 30 seconds. I'm thinking of all this stuff that I got to do, and I'm taking notes, and so I feel like there's a part of this which is, pushing outside of your comfort zone. One, in terms of what you're comfortable with, and two, what you think others are going to judge you about. I remember doing a hot yoga class back in Baltimore with a friend of mine, James, many years ago, probably like 2005 or six. And I remember thinking the same thing, man, like, we're going to be the only guys there. And he goes, you single? I said, yeah. He goes, so am I. You think that's a problem? And I was like, well, no, man. Like, are girls going to like a guy that does yoga? I mean, this was my thought process, my mindset way back when. And I thought to myself, they're going to think I'm too feminine, and they're not going to like me. That was it. And so I challenge these guys to do something that pushes you outside of your comfort zone and also feeds your soul at the same time, because it's kind of a double benefit. Just don't do it to do it. Don't do it to check it off, check another box or check it off the list. Be in it and actually experience what you're meant to experience within it, and actually get something from it, so that it now becomes a habit where you understand that this is you time, like serious inner work time, and for preparing you for inner work. Dude, one of the things that I like to do, it sounds so simple, is just swing. I get on my kids' swings out back in my house. And I live on a top of a mountain, and there's a canyon that drops off my backyard. And the motion just calms me, man. And I'm really not thinking about a lot. It's that like, what would you call it? Porch
gazing. I was thinking it's very similar. Yeah.
It's very similar to that. And I watch the birds fly around. You can see coyotes down in the canyon. And it sounds so simple. And I'm telling you, it is one of the most powerful things that I have to realign myself in after this, I've got a call 20 minutes later. We're going to wrap, and I'm going to go do some swinging for like 10 minutes. And it will recenter me, because I've got 4 more hours worth of stuff to do today. And it'll recenter me. And it sounds so simple, and it really is. And it's what works for me. And you have to explore that. You've got to be confident enough in yourself, in who you are. And if you're not, then you know where to start the work. You know what you need to do. So I like that.
I've always come back to it. It is so simple. And as humans, we tend to overcomplicate things. And I would like to add as well what you were saying about the chasing discomfort. My buddy wrote a book recently, what's it called? Hunting Discomfort. He wrote a book called Hunting Discomfort. I could hook you up with him. He'd be a great interview. His name's Sterling Hawkins, if anyone wants to check him out. He's great at what he does. But anyways, I wanted to relate that back to soul life balance, because that's exactly what this message is all about. Yes, there's I forget how you said it, but like doing the hard thing, that would be the life side of the equation.
Right.
And to slow down, that would be the soul side, to feed your soul. So yes, it's not just about like going within. We also are humans now. So we need to live our lives. And I'm not saying like we're always going to be that feminine energy. Like, yes, we need to tap into that masculine. And I think a great modality that someone could try if they're feeling like their mind is racing in meditation or breath work or anything else is a cold plunge or an ice bath. I mean, actually literally going into because a cold plunge, like in the ocean or whatever, is one thing. But if you go to ice bath and you're sitting there in the ice bath and you're just freezing in that 33-degree water or
you
whatever.
Can't move.
It's just learning the art of surrender and slowing the thoughts down. So I think that could be a really powerful thing for someone to try if they haven't tried doing it and they struggle with meditation or just a racing mind,
Yeah. It is absolutely possible to slow the mind. It's absolutely possible. And I find it to be absolutely necessary in my life and the guys that I coach and the people that I support, because think about how much mind share is being taken up by old programming, stuff going on the outside, what people think about you, and how much power your brain actually has if you didn't have any of that taking up that energy and space. That's what I get curious about. So like the work I want to do, because it makes me curious as to what's possible when I can eliminate some of these things that no longer serve me. Super simple. You know what I mean? So on that same note, I have so many areas I want to take this into, and I'm just trying to think about, okay, stay on topic here. Don't ADD out on this one. There's like On your one sheet, I really like how to overcome stress while simultaneously optimizing efficiencies. The other thing that I've noticed in my life in the last couple of years is I've made conscious decisions to move people out of my life that just don't serve my life and I don't serve theirs anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And I heard this great quote from Tyler Perry. It was like, some people are meant to be here for a day, a month, a year, or a lifetime. You have to be at peace with whenever the boosters are ready to peel off, because the altitude that you've gotten to, they can't hang anymore, right? It's like rocket ship. What he's talking about is, look at the boosters on the side of a space shuttle. They take it to a certain height and then they peel off. And the rocket ship doesn't go, oh, wait, I was with them at the beginning. Let me go back. Let me not reach the heights that I'm capable of. Let me stay where the boosters are comfortable. And that's a tough thing to do. That's a tough thing to process. You got to let some people go. There might be some turmoil. There might be some, anger or whatever it might be. And there might be some hurt feelings because you really like this person. You just realize that they can't hang at the altitude that you're hanging at anymore. They just can't. And they're not willing to do the work. If somebody's coachable and willing to do the work, they're coming anyway. They're right along with you. So the thing that you say in here is recreating yourself without burning bridges. And that's what it reminds me of. So I want to talk about that because that's been something very prevalent in my life. I taught myself not to get involved with it. If somebody makes a choice for their life that they don't want to push themselves as much as they can and reach their fullest potential, I'm okay with that. You don't have to hang where I'm hanging. You just have to push yourself to your fullest potential. And if that scares you, you can't hang with me.
Yeah. And plenty of other people will kind of remove themselves because they'll just be like not feeling what you're into anymore. But the two things that really come up for me are, one, soul contracts, and two, patience with relationships. So starting with soul contracts, for anyone listening, if you guys have seen Disney and Pixar's movie Soul, then you'll know what I'm talking about. If you haven't seen that movie, go see it right away. It's an incredible film. But basically, the idea is before we incarnate, we come in with contracts with other beings. So this is something that I believe in. You can take it or leave it. But in the movie Soul, they don't directly speak on soul contracts. You kind of have to know about it. And then you can be like, oh, I see how that makes sense. Because in the movie, there's the main character, Joe Gardner, and I won't spoil it or anything else, but he's matched up with this Soul 22. And they have a contract. They don't explicitly say it in the movie, but they go into the 3D realm to go live out what they're supposed to be doing. So the idea is our soul is playing in this other realm or dimension, you could think of it as. And Ian and I clearly have a contract just based upon us connecting through this podcast. This is the first time we've actually connected. We're definitely going to be going deeper. I can feel that and can tell. And it's not so much so that looking at, oh, I went to the grocery store and I interacted with a cashier. So they're not NPC. They're not a non-playable character. They're here. I must have a contract for them. We're not looking at that minutely. We're looking at more as our parents, our partners, people we do business with, the people that we stay connected with. And we're here to help each other and to grow. So to your point, and that totally aligns with the Tyler Perry saying or quote, because sometimes it's just the end of the contract and that's what you were meant to do. Now, for me, being a quote unquote recovering bro, when I first went down this path, I realized how much time I was spending with fantasy football. And I mean, I was listening to actually it was Sirius XM real-time radio fantasy shows all throughout the day. I was getting all the push notifications. Everything on my mind at that point was fantasy football because I had already put that kind of drive and passion in my business, and it was where it was at. So I had so much free time and everything went into football, and I really didn't like it, and I knew I didn't like it. But after sitting with ayahuasca, I realized it was time to make the change. And I kept getting these little whispers that, it was time to leave the league. And our league, every guy's going to say this, that they have the most competitive league, but our league felt that way. We had a high buy-in destination draft. Our WhatsApp thread was going off every single day, all day, even in the off season. We would put our alarms on for the middle of the night to do waivers, all the things. Wow. It was ridiculous. anyways, though, I end up doing this. It was either a new moon or a full moon ceremony. I saw it on the schedule at a yoga studio, and kind of like what you're talking about, the hot yoga class, like are women going to be into a guy that does yoga? I was kind of thinking like, am I not a man if I go do this thing that sounds pretty womany? Like, like that type of thing. I was
Yeah.
like, I don't care. Like, whatever. I'm just going to go. And it was amazing. And I could get into the moon cycles and everything else because that's actually really fascinating. But in this little like yoga, journaling, sharing circle, music type workshop I went to, I just kept hearing a whisper to leave the league. And I was like, I don't know how, like, the guys are going to hate me. They're going to disown me. And that's exactly what happened. I spoke my truth and I just said, I need to focus time on myself. And, they started using all the vulgar names you could call someone. And at the time it was just my dog and myself. And a lot of the guys were married with kids, saying like, we do this with our wives and our kids, and we have our business and whatever else. Like, you can do it. You're just by yourself and you're not even spending any time in your business, all this type of stuff. And I'm like, just standing in my truth, taking it all. We went probably at least 6 months, maybe longer, not talking, like with any of the guys. And I reconnected with most of them, the ones that I was closest with. And, we talk, we have a different relationship now, and they are starting to come to a point where now they're microdosing with psilocybin, and they're starting to open up their minds. They're not quite like, we're not quite on the same vibe or frequency. It's kind of like what you said, I'm going a different path, and hey, that's totally cool. I've had the same thing happen with my parents, who didn't understand me dancing from ceremony to plant medicine, ceremony to ceremony, where now like they're able to be so proud to see like what's unfolded. Whereas before it was like, are you a drug addict? And this has come in a lot of different ways. So I think it's really important to be patient with the relationships, realize that we can't change someone. We can stand and speak and live in our truth. But as soon as we start to change someone, that's when it's going to start burn that bridge. So just giving them the space, realizing like they are doing their thing, I'm doing my thing, and kind of just staying in that lane.
Yeah, I really want to dive into plant medicine with you, and I want to get this. I want to get this first. One of the biggest reasons why we exist, the Men on Purpose movement, the organization, the everything, the curriculum, at the base level, is to help guys understand who they authentically are and why they are here on this planet, right? Purpose. So that they can live these really, truly fulfilling, authentic, and regret-free lives, which most guys are not authentic, right? They want to leave the league, but they're afraid their friends won't talk to them. And their friends don't understand, just like yours and some of mine, they don't understand the deeper connection with self. They're like, well, dude, you got time. Why aren't you doing it? And to say, well, it doesn't serve me anymore is so abstract to a lot of people.
Totally.
They're like, whatever, man, that's foo-foo shit. Well, whatever. Yeah. And then some of those guys, like you talk about, like adjusting to the world after you kind of wake up to something and go, oh my God, the blinders are removed. Now I see things differently. So what we're doing here is we're helping men understand who they truly are and empowering them to free themselves of those internal restrictions and constraints that they have allowed to stop them from living the life they're truly supposed to live, allowing money and success and power and all these different things in business or in their careers or their family to define them. So let's talk about purpose. It's a big thing because it's your life's purpose, yet at the same time, it's also not that big. It's actually more about eliminating than it is about doing more stuff to try and find it.
Yeah, dude, it's interesting how this line of questioning went, because I actually had a plant medicine, earth medicine with the toad, bufal, various 5-MeO, DMT that was very profound around purpose. And, for a long time, especially being in, on the spiritual path and being in Aubrey Marcus's mastermind Fit for Service, surrounded by so many amazing humans that are doing soul development, the word purpose and dharma and mission and all these different type of words that basically mean the same thing keep coming up on whether it's a personal development path or soul development path.
Yeah.
And I've always had so much resistance to it. And in a lot of ways, like after being named Silicon Valley's 40 under 40, building my business and all that type of stuff, it was like, this isn't what I want. I don't want to go down that path. I just want to know ultimate truth. I
Right.
just want to be connected to something bigger than this because I've gone this far in the journey and it was the goals I set out for. I could set bigger goals and keep going, but that doesn't feel right. Right. So when I kept hearing about purpose, mission, and dharma, it was like, no, I did that thing. And even though I know that the way I did it wasn't necessarily my mission, purpose, or dharma, it was just like the energy that went along with it felt very scattered. It felt very neurotic. It felt very external, like it wasn't mine. It felt very disconnected from self. And I was like, I don't want that anymore. So in this medicine ceremony, what came through was self-love. And basically, if quantum physics, which it does, quantum physics teaches us that the external world we experience with our senses is a reflection of our inner world, meaning that if we don't like the way our life is going, our relationships or whatever, instead of trying to in the outer world change that, maybe just maybe the answer is to go within, slow down, to soften, to check in what's going on the inside, get your inner landscape in order, in homeostasis, and from there outwardly express. So to me, what really came down to was anyone's mission, purpose, or dharma is all about self-love. Anything more than that is contributing to the mess, because as a collective consciousness, if we can go within, find self-love and reflect that outwardly. I know this is super woo for sure.
Oh, it's cool.
Yeah, but that's kind of what came through. There's a little bit more to that, but yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on purpose.
I really think that of all the books and the stuff that I've studied about purpose, soul's purpose, earthbound purpose, that kind of thing, it really seems like the entire purpose of your life or the entire goal of your life is to find your purpose, align with it, and live it. And then you're truly aligned. And then your life becomes easier. That's why we have our purpose-driven formula is illuminate, eliminate, calibrate equals acceleration. You don't have to accelerate. Your natural alignment will accelerate you automatically. It just will. And I think, I'll be 40 on Monday. And I think my whole life, like even when my daughter just turned 7, even thinking about her as a baby when she was born, I was 33. I didn't understand anything about life. I understood making money and being married and the societal contracts that we have, not the soul contracts. And it's interesting because over the last 7 years, I set out on a journey after my daughter was born to really understand who I am and why I'm here. And subsequently, I created a company around it. I created a brand and a mission and a movement around it. Technically, I didn't create Mental Purpose, the brand. I bought it. I created what it is today. It was nothing before. And so once you align, I really feel like 40 is like being 10 years old. Like I finally see the world from a place that I've never seen it clearly and cleared out inside and free to just operate how I've never operated before. Aligned and not caring about exterior, not caring about material, not caring what people think. It's a really freeing place. And I feel fortunate enough to be able to have aligned with that mission and that purpose of my life, which is really this. It's men's work, right?
Absolutely, Ian, and happy early birthday, by the way, as
Thanks,
well.
man.
And yeah, so what comes up for me with that is I forgot to talk about the second part of this, which basically I'm not saying that like purpose is all just a bunch of crock of shit. What I'm basically saying is you need to get yourself in alignment first, exactly how Ian did it. So rather than creating from a chaotic state and adding more chaos to the external world, we can hear in Ian's story that he just shared about how he went within, started doing the inner work. I call it self-love. You could call it inner work or whatever else.
Yeah.
And then from there, coming from a clear place to be able to build men on purpose and really understand men Men on purpose. Yeah. For a second, I got the words confused. I was like, I'm saying purpose too much. But yeah. From there, you understand your purpose, mission, dharma, all that for
Yeah.
sure.
So when somebody removes the blinders, waking up, whatever you want to call it,
Hmm.
how are they actually, how do they reintegrate into this same life? It's like when you leave a really powerful seminar or weekend retreat or something, and you're like, whoa, 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 how am I going to do this? And then you go back home and it's the same environment, same people. You go to work, same people, same environment, same commute to work, same car, same clothes. Yet you're technically, something's changed. How do you make sure that the rubber band stays stretched and doesn't snap back as you reintegrate with all of these similar things that just kind of, you could just blend back into, how do you do that?
Yeah, I think whether if it's a transformational conference like Tony Robbins or going through a program like Landmark, which I haven't gone through, but you mentioned it, a plant medicine ceremony or a really amazing retreat, whatever it might be, leaving time on the back end when you come back to integrate. And most people, what they do is they go back to their lives and how it normally is and just back into the rat race and plug and play, and then you have some of these new insights, these new downloads that come through, these new experiences, these new outlooks on life, and hopefully it'll raise you a little bit, but you're pretty much back to where you were. And then what it can do is start to make you chase that, because now you're like, oh, I want that experience again, and you're looking outside of yourself. Whereas if you leave a day, 2 days, or 3 days to properly integrate, which we'll get into, that's when you can start to make the shifts, because now you're away from that environment and you're back in your home environment, and you're starting to take actions on whatever it is that came through on how you want to change your life, whether it's like physical fitness or it's healthy eating or it's changing relationships or starting a new business, whatever the thing is, just creating that space. What does integration actually look like? Well, I would recommend to choose maybe 1 to 3 modalities and go from there. I have a whole list of them I could share, but just to we've talked about a lot of different things. It could
Yeah.
be starting going to the gym or somewhere like that has a hot a sauna and a cold bath or cold plunge, something like that, and integrating that into your life. It could be breath work, meditation, journaling, all those type of things. It could be getting into nature, but creating these new things that are going to help you integrate whatever it was. It's very different, in my opinion, if it's like plant medicine as opposed to like, a conference or something like that. But however, whatever it is, the aim of whatever you're doing is to create more space.
Yeah.
It's to do less and be more, and to listen more, and just to soften. And if you go through something like that, you know what the things are for you. And the other thing that I want to mention on that, the reason why I said 1 to 3 things, is most of the time in a situation like this, we try to do them all. We try to be like, all right, I'm going to wake up and I'm going to meditate, then I'm going to do some breathing, then I'm going to journal about my experience, then I'm going to go to a yoga class, and it's like, what the hell are you doing? Like, most people, that's not going to be practical. That's great if you create the space to do that for a few days and kind of recreate that zone for yourself. That's awesome. But most likely for most of us, it's not going to be sustainable over the next week, 2 weeks, month, year, and so on. So what I would recommend instead of like approaching doing the work as a to-do list, which would be in our masculine, in the yang energy,
Yeah.
soften in the yin energy and see what you're feeling called to in that moment, and just limit it to 1 to 3 things, depending on how long it's going to take you. Like if you go on an epic hike, you're going to do one thing, right?
Right.
Like just starting to slow down and tap into that intuition.
Guys ask me all the time, what's your morning routine look like? And I'll say, well, whatever serves me best that morning. And they're like, what do you mean? You don't have a routine? I say, my routine is trusting myself and honoring what serves me best. So if laying in bed and listening to an audio, that serves me best, I trust it. And if getting up and running 5 miles and working out at the gym hard, or going for a hard swim, or taking a hike, or just going out and breathing the air for 30 minutes, I know what to do, because I've cleared enough out that I actually know and trust myself. And I don't have to do 7 things of my morning routine just to tell you that I did 7 and you only do 6, which makes me better than, like, craziness,
Totally.
absolute craziness. Yeah, dude, this has been it's been such a great conversation. I really appreciate your time, and I'm not sure where that hour just went. So
Yeah,
like,
totally.
oh, I have so many more questions for you. We're gonna connect offline here, and we're gonna figure out how to maybe pair some of these cool missions and purposes up, and tell people where they can find the books, all the stuff that you're doing for the world.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ian. Yeah, this conversation has been great. And I'd love to have you on my podcast. We'll talk
Yeah,
about it.
man.
It's called Soul Seeker. And yeah, my website, samkabert.com, chose to keep it simple. Once you go to the website, you'll see a lot of stuff about speaking, because that's kind of the career I've been building this past year. It's also got links to my podcast, my book, Soul Life Balance, the social media links, and then there's a free download there too. I forget what it is. There might be two now, because I think I just changed it, but I do have one that's like a glossary of terms, which is
Yeah.
really cool, because I remember when I got into this work, I was like, man, what is feeling called and like lean into, and like all with love? Like, what is all this stuff? So it's a little snippet from my book, where in the book we have like, I don't know, 100 terms or something.
Yeah.
In the PDF download, it's like 50 or something of the most common ones. So that's pretty cool. But you can find everything at samkabert.com.
Love it, man. Kabert.
Yes, sir.
That's a cool idea. I just wrote that down. Glossary of terms. That's a neat idea. I haven't heard that before. Just to
Yeah,
make sure that people are educated on the language that we're speaking in this type of world. That's so super cool, man. So thanks for being here, Sam. Appreciate it, man. And yeah, dude, we're gonna do some new stuff together. We're gonna do some really cool stuff together.
would love to. Thank you so much, Ian, and
Absolutely.
enjoy the swing.
Thanks, man. Audience, appreciate you listening. Go to mentalpurpose.net for anything you need having to do with this podcast. Learn about Sam, learn about Soul Seeker, or go to soulseeker.com. Anything you need, it'll be in the show notes. And we love you. We appreciate you listening, and we'll catch you on the next one.